Will you pray for me? Lord, may the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, because you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Here's what it's like to be a mother duck. When it comes time to breed, when you're feeling broody, here's what you do. It's usually in this part of the world, it's usually the middle or the end of March. Mother duck goes and finds a safe, sheltered place and starts gathering twigs, you know this part, and stuff and leaves and grass, and forms it into a little bowl somewhere out of the way where it's not likely to be seen, where there's a little bit of cover overhead maybe, where it's easy to get to water. And then the mother duck lays her eggs. She lays one a day usually. Often a clutch is as many as 12, so it takes her 12 days to lay all these eggs that she has. And they don't start developing yet. See, she wants them to hatch all at the same time. So she's able to lay them and keep them from developing so that they'll all hatch at the same time. And the way she activates them, the way she starts them developing, is with her body heat. But there's a problem here. Ducks are covered in feathers. Feathers are designed to be insulating, to keep the cold out, right? Although that's a bit of a cheat. Cold isn't actually a thing. Cold is just the absence of heat. So really what those feathers are for is to keep the heat in. And if these feathers are keeping all the heat in, how is she to warm those eggs? So here's what happens. The skin on her breast and on her stomach starts to thicken and become vascularized. It grows new blood vessels, more and more and more blood vessels, until that whole area is so hot. And then she does this. She starts to pluck her own chest. One by one, she pulls those feathers out and uses them to line the nest. One by one by one, with that big, flat beak of hers, she manages to get a hold of them and rip them out of her own body. And use them to cover those eggs and line that nest until she is all bare and exposed, and then she settles down on those eggs. This is not a neutral activity from the point of view of the duck. Nobody knows how it feels, but feathers are not unlike hair. They're dead cells growing out of your skin that is just chock full of nerve endings. And so we assume that when a mother duck does this, it hurts just as much as it would if you were to pluck a patch of hair this big out of your own head. And those feathers are there for a reason, don't forget. This is March in Syracuse we're talking about. And this duck is going to have to land on the water sooner or later. Imagine going in the lake in March in Syracuse with your naked skin. It feels the same to the duck as it would to you. Those feathers are there to protect her not only from the heat, not only from the cold, to keep that heat in. They're there for camouflage. When she flies, that patch shines like the sun. The predators can see it. She smells different with all that blood pumping through her body. This is not a neutral activity for this mother duck. And actually, it's not just the mothers. Almost all birds develop this patch. They call it a brood patch, and in species where both the mother and the father incubates the eggs, they both get it. Pelicans are so famous for their brood patch that medieval writers wrote entire chapters of books about the pelican. They grew so many blood vessels. It became so blood rich right here that when they plucked their own feathers out, they would bleed. And pelicans have this thing they do where they bang their own bills against their chests. It's not to do with breeding. They just do it. But people who saw this in the Middle Ages, they saw this beak with the little point on it going down, and they saw the bleeding, and they thought that the mother was piercing her own body to feed her chicks with blood when there wasn't enough food to keep them alive. Oh, how I have longed to gather your children beneath my wings, says Jesus. And he is not talking about snuggling. This isn't sweet. This isn't gentle, what he's talking about. This is not a neutral activity Jesus is offering to do. Oh, how I have longed to gather you beneath me. And Jesus knows this when he says it. That if those chicks are going to survive, he's going to have to bear himself. He's going to have to remove all the protections. He's going to have to pluck and pluck until he is bare, and he is probably going to have to bleed. And it's going to hurt. And still he longs for it. Still he prays that it will happen. Here's what the world says. Protect yourself as best you can. Wrap yourself up as tightly as you can. Put as many layers as you can manage between yourself and that cold, hard world. Here's what the world says. Wrap yourself up tight, and if there's a threat, then you go after it hard and you penetrate as hard as you can. Here's what the ducks and the geese and the pelicans and Jesus Christ say. Bear yourself to the world. Pluck yourself raw if you have to, and don't throw that protection away. Use it for the chicks. Don't get rid of it. Line the nest of the world with it, and then settle down skin to skin. Don't protect yourself. Don't run away. Skin to skin, even if it means you're going to have to bleed. Here's what they say. Get rid of the protection. Pluck out some of your IRA and spend it on righteousness. Pluck out a couple of those 3 coats you bought at H&M last week. You didn't need 3. Give them away. Pluck out the safety of sitting in this big, beautiful, warm building and go out those doors and find the lost chicks. Bear yourself to the world. Here's what Jesus and the ducks and the geese and the pelicans say. It's going to hurt. And it may make you bleed. But it's the only thing that's going to save the world. If you believe that, say amen.